Support for the Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, where family trips to Florida can begin and end close to home. Nonstop service on Allegiant Airlines to Tampa St. Pete and Orlando Sanford from Bloomington. Close, convenient, Sierra. More at CIRA.com.
The Salvation Army is asking for 50% more money in this year's bell ringing campaign. It's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Friday, November 14th. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with those red kettles you're starting to see in Bloomington Normal. The Salvation Army hopes those kettles can collect a lot more money this year. Here's WGLT student reporter Ben Howell.
The Salvation Army Bell Ringer campaign goal is just over $1 million. That's a $300,000 increase over last year's target. Major Dan Leischer says the nonprofit lost about $700,000 in government funding this year.
That's a bulk of why we're asking for such a huge increase.
And Leischer says there's more need for food assistance this year, especially after SNAP benefits were temporarily cut during the recent government shutdown. The Salvation Army is preparing for increased capacity at its Safe Harbor shelter this winter, and the delayed opening of the shelter village, known as the Bridge, that's not coming until January. Still, Leischer acknowledges a 50% higher fundraising goal is asking a lot.
We're shooting for the moon, and if we don't get it, we'll at least be among the stars. That's what we're kind of philosophizing. I know it's a lot.
And if they don't reach the target, Leischer says program cuts may be necessary.
That's the last thing I want to do, or the last thing I really want to think about. But obviously, we've had conversation. I would never want to hold the community hostage either, over this.
The red kettles will be out until Christmas Eve. A mail-in campaign runs through January. For The Leadoff, I'm Ben Howell.
Here's some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. David Brown, Connect Transit's managing director, has taken a leave of absence and may not return to the transit agency. That's according to an internal communication obtained by WGLT. No reason was given. Doug Hennessy has died at the age of 87. The Catholic priest, known as Father Doug, was also known for his kindness, his work in the civil rights era, and a half-century of service to the people of Central Illinois. And authorities are investigating the death of a pedestrian who was struck by a vehicle on Veterans Parkway between Oakland and Lincoln. That happened Wednesday night. The man's name has not yet been released. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. A new study raises questions about nearly 200 Illinoisans who have a federal license to manufacture guns, but don't actually make them. The Violence Policy Center is a national nonprofit focused on gun violence reduction. Its studies suggest people are actually getting the license for personal use because it lets them bypass restrictions on guns that would otherwise apply. Josh Sugarman with the Violence Policy Center says over 80% of those with this Type 07 license didn't make any guns in the year that they studied.
So we know what they aren't doing, but the real question to us is, what are they using the license for? And I think in a state like Illinois that has prioritized the regulation of those who possess these licenses, it's an important question to answer.
Can you explain to our listeners who may not even be familiar with this type of thing, what is a Type 07 federal firearms license?
To manufacture guns in America, you have to get a license from the federal government through the agency known as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And this gun manufacturing license is known as a Type 7. So basically, it's called a Type 7 FFL, Federal Firearms License. And that license grants the holder specific privileges, of course, manufacturing guns, but also the ability to buy and sell firearms in interstate commerce, receive them via common carrier, buy guns at discount and unlimited quantities, and then bypass the requirements that apply to private citizens who want to purchase firearms. But also, just as important, by paying an extra fee to the federal government each year, it allows the license holder to undercut the ban on the possession of fully automatic machine guns that took place in 1986.
You refer to some of these license holders, these Type 07 license holders, as ghost manufacturers or hidden manufacturers. Why is that?
When we looked at Illinois, we found that there were 226 Type 07 licenses held by Illinois citizens, yet 82% of them never manufactured any guns. So that's the first question. If they're not making guns, what are they doing with the license? And the second point we found was that nearly 1/3 of non-manufacturing licensees appear to be in residential homes. So while we call them hidden or ghost manufacturers, they have the license, they can undertake the activities allowed by the license, but odds are very high for a significant number of them that their neighbors, the communities themselves, may not know what they're doing.
How hard is it to get one of these licenses?
It's not very hard. In fact, this is cited in our study, there's a whole cottage industry that's designed to aid people want to get the license. And we believe for personal use, a significant number of them, and aids them in doing that. I mean, it's basically you're paying $150 a year. It's a 3-year license. Once you get it, ATF, the odds are that they will ever inspect you are very, very low.
That you're saying that some people may be using these licenses to avoid background checks for transactions, to get around restrictions on guns. What sort of evidence do you have that that's actually happening?
Unfortunately for this study, all we've been able to do is identify the number of licenses, where the license holder's quote-unquote place of business is located, and then track the number of guns manufactured. We know what they aren't doing, but the question is, what are they doing? But having said that, if history is any guide, there is unfortunately great opportunity for the license to be abused.
What are some of the recommendations that the Violence Policy Center has as part of coming out of this study about ways to deal with this question of what are they doing?
Well, looking at Illinois specifically, our primary recommendation is that the state or local community should use the data they have and the data that's available to review who has the license and how they're using it, where they're located, are they meeting all zoning, business, licensing, other criteria, which can be from the state level down to the local level. And that's the primary finding of the study for Illinois. On the federal level, it should just be much tougher to get the license and the fees should be increased, and the federal government should work to make sure that those who get the license are actually what's called engaged in the business of manufacturing firearms and ensure that they're not getting the license for personal use.
That's Josh Sugarman, Executive Director of the Violence Policy Center. You can find a link to the center's study as well as an interactive map showing Type 07 license holders in McLean County at WGLT.org. And that is it for today. I'm Brian Denham. The show is produced by Cheyenne Brown. You can subscribe to The Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.